We're back with Season 6, Episode 19, The Fault in Our Cutie Marks. This episode was one of the biggest ones that was adjusted for schedule. Apparently this was originally Episode 9, and they pushed it back, which was actually a good move, if you think about it, because there's an earlier episode where, you know, they're like, oh, we can't help anyone. And then now we have an episode where it's like, oh, I can help everyone, and they have such a big rep and all that. It just lines up a little bit better. This is the episode in which Gabby, who is a griffin, comes from Griffin Stone in order to be like, hey, could you give me a cutie mark? And the cutie mark crusaders go, sure. And then they fail. And then they succeed at the end. I have to admit, one of the things I like about fiction, so obviously most people, including me, acknowledge when fiction is relevant to real life. You know, ideas or concepts or lessons that are applicable and useful can be a good thing. But one of the things that really tends to work well for me is things that are only applicable in fiction. Things that can only happen within the fictional setting in question. To wit, imagine the idea of a... imagine for a moment that you can choose your own, personal choice in life, your destiny, your path, your career, whatever you want to call it. As I've talked about many times when discussing the nature of exactly what cutie marks are from a setting building perspective. Now imagine for a moment that a literal physical brand that represents that just kind of appears. That, you could hide, imagine it was on your arm or something like that, to use a human equivalent. So you can hide it, but still, it's there, and it's always a reminder of that. So, imagine for a moment that you get something that you don't really want, or actually, to be slightly more accurate, because you'll always get something you want, but imagine your parents don't want it for you. Or imagine you're worried about other people in your family as an aggregate, or maybe, your town or your neighbors looking down upon you for it. Clearly, the parents at the beginning of this episode were rather worried about the possibility of what was going on with their daughter's cutie mark, because it's just like, because it's a frickin' skull and bones, not an actual crossbow, or a crossbones, not an actual jelly rider, but, it's, think about it, right? But the other thing that kind of got me thinking about this, that's also a visual representation of you. That's the whole point of it, and the whole concept of the pattern, yada, yada, yada. But it's who you are, who you have chosen to be within the greater pattern of how society and the world works. So you don't get to choose what that picture is. You don't get to pick that. It's just something that happens. Now, in some cases, this is kind of, yeah, okay, that makes perfect sense. And in other cases, it's like, I've seen some of the cutie marks and what they represent on some ponies over the course of this series, and some of the times I'm like, how is that supposed to represent that? Because again, they don't have to choose that. Obviously, I can't think of the name of Hasbro. Hasbro decides because they want to sell toys. But my point is, in universe, in setting, you don't get to pick. It's just, like, I'd like to think my cutie mark would be this, the Imperial symbol. I have absolutely no idea if it would or not. Right? It could be a book, it could be a pen or a quill, or I don't even know what else, right? I just look at that like, huh. Okay. It's just food for thought. You are incredibly wrong, S.A. Ross. There we go. It's okay, I've punched the wrong out of you. You like Twilight Sparkle now. Or Starlight Glimmer, excuse me. Look, their names are exactly the same, alright? It's hard to get them distinguished. So anyways, quick little thing. Biceps has taken their advice. Did you catch that? Both Biceps has taken their advice and has started actually, teaching people how to weightlift. That's kind of funny. So of course Gabby's name starts with a G. Got to keep that trend going. I wonder how like they do decide that. Do they run out? Do they start cheating at a certain point? Like, do they call someone, instead of Joseph, they call someone Goseph? She's a little bit energetic. I love the animation on, like, their faces when they're being squeezed with the hug. And there's, like, that really quick first-person shot as they're being hugged. I also looked up the actress's name and didn't recognize her from most things. She apparently played some random scientist in Mass Effect 1, has been in a bunch of games, shows, you know. She also played, this is the, Erin Matthews is her name. The biggest role that I recognized her for was Sydney in Final Fantasy 15, which is a very minor role and not a very good one in a game I don't consider all that great. So I have no idea who this actress is my overall point. She does a good job in this one, though. She apparently has a good singing voice, too. Either way, Gabby reminds me a lot of Pinkie Pie. She has been, during her flashback, we get the idea that she has been in the face of negativity for most of her life by virtue of how the Griffins and their society exist. And her response to that, her defense against that, is to throw out so much positivity as to serve as a buffer, if you will, a barrier between herself and the negativity. And that makes sense, because that is one of the defense mechanisms that we can use against that thing. And again, is pretty much exactly what Pinkie Pie does all the time. She also describes what I've called the pattern many, many times in one single sentence. And that is, and I quote, because I wrote it down, "I saw how helping spreads from pony to pony and griffin to griffin." There you go. There's the pattern in one sentence. Meanwhile, we see that Gilda is still male buddies with Rainbow Dash. I want to mention... Oh, I don't think she has 1 HP. I just think that's her defense mechanism. Same defense mechanism, different HP standard. I've lost my train of thought. To once again speak about the benefits of animation, which is something I've been getting more and more in favor of, it means you can go to war at any time. Sorry. What it means is you can have a character have a cameo or be present in an episode without having to actually tap the actor or actress, which is helpful if they can't get a hold, you can't get a hold of them, or you don't have the money for them, or they're dead, or they've left the show, or whatever. You can still have the character be relevant, you just have to have them not have any lines. This is shown in this very episode with Gilda, who shows up several times and doesn't say a single line of dialogue. I know I've brought this up before, but it is relevant, and I'm going to keep mentioning it as it is relevant to the benefits of utilizing animation as a storytelling medium. Meanwhile... Gilda still is the male buddy with Rainbow. Just catch that. It's a nice little tidbit. And then she runs over, and it's like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. That sounds like a challenge! And yeah, that's Gilda in a nutshell. Yeah, exactly, S.A. Ross. Plus, there's politics involved. I don't want to get too much back off track of this, but there's a reason why several characters, like Baron over there, would refuse to be shown in future episodes of Trek. It's because of the fact that there's a lot of politics that goes on in the background, I can spell, of designing a TV show. So in some cases, you want to axe a character because it's from a writer you don't like, or because it's from something that the producers didn't care for. You know, like the fact that Thomas Riker never showed up again in DS9. That was actually an executive mandate, as I've mentioned before. Sometimes there's worries about who you have to pay for them to show up because of rights issues or settlement issues, which don't always show up. Yada, yada, yada. There are plenty of examples of times where politics, usually office politics, Superstar, Ultra, you got it. Thank you again, Baron. Get in the way of a character making a recurring appearance, even when in-universe, it would make perfect sense for that character to come back. This is one of the reasons, by the way, that the MCU has gone out of its way. Every time they tap a character or an actor to be in their show or their movies, they make a point of saying, all right, sign this contract, and also this contract obligates you to do X number of future showings. Sometimes in movies, sometimes in TV options. In other words, the MCU, of all the things they have done wrong, one of the things they did right is they tried to make sure that they would have, at the very least, financial weight behind being able to bring an actor or actress back. Obviously, there's some cases in which they can't do anything about that because Chadwick Boseman, which sucks. But anyways, again, animation bypasses many of those issues. I'm just saying, whenever I start making my own television shows, I'm leaning more and more towards making them animated than live action. I'm just pointing it out there. Anyways, so then we mentioned Gilda, both biceps, tender taps is there. They also mentioned using magic to get a cutie mark. That is 4 continuity counters. I just want to get out of the way really quick. Pom, 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 pom. And there's the encounters right here. If I can find it, there we go. Boom. And yeah, with animation, you always have the option of replacing the voice actor. Obviously, that's the last resort. It's never something that should happen. But it is something that is an option. Whereas replacing an actor, well, that's a whole thing, isn't it? That's also true, Act. I talk about that in something. Or maybe I did talk about that in something recently. I did. Last week, I brought that up with regards to Discord. And I mentioned how there were several tricks, or it wasn't Discord, no. No, it was Discord. Discord's Ogres and Oubliettes. I brought up that there's several things they did in that episode. Tiny little tricks that were so those kind of things would be incredibly difficult to do financially and practically in a live-action show. Even with modern tech, it still wouldn't look the same. So, there you go. Holodeck animation just kind of fit together. Moving on. So, you notice she's a little bit of a glomper? I wonder what a flying glomp feels like. Like, I'm picturing my niece gaining the ability to fly, and she's coming home from school, because I'm usually there when she gets home from school, when I'm visiting. And I'm just picturing her flying down the hill. I think that would be joy. But anyways, point being, there's this nice little bit here. Apple Bloom says, why would you promise something that can't be done? The thing is, if you pay attention, she didn't. I actually rewound and wrote this down exactly what she said, which was, I promise we're going to do everything we can to help you get your mark. Now, that may sound... I hate to pull legal lingo into this, but that is actually not saying I'm going to promise to get you your mark. It's saying I'm going to do everything in my power to help you get your mark. That is a huge distinction, and that is exactly what they do. I just wanted to point that out. But of course, Scootaloo in particular was, well, of course she's invested in this, right? The episode doesn't say it outright, but she does actually point out her wings. She flaps the wings, and she says, and I quote, I wrote it down, I know what it's like to want something that's out of reach. Yep. I mean, of course Scootaloo would try to push for that. Wouldn't she? I mean, I dream impossible dreams. Just the other day, I dreamed that Savacom was playing FF9, but had put it down. This is not a joke, by the way. That she put the game down because she found it too irritating or frustrating to play. And so I said, well, why didn't you use... or I'm sorry. What I actually said is, why did you buy the PS1 version? And she said, no, I bought the modern version. I said, well, why don't you use the cheats? And then she just looks at me weird. There's cheats? Anyways. Not making that up. That actually happened. Notes. So we have a montage song with Gabby being good at basically everything. It reminds me of something as she's running around doing all this stuff. It's a decent enough song. Notice Gabby has a life vest. Remember, when you're out in the ocean, make sure you have your life vest on. Good lesson. Some settings have a species that's just higher stats than the others. Like, there's some settings where it's just that race, that species is a better word, that species is just superior in terms of raw stats. And there's actually a lot of settings that have that exact kind of concept. I know that griffins are not that, although they are strong and fast, yada, yada, yada. But, it's a fairly common thing. Like, dragons in a lot of settings. Not in this one, weirdly enough, but dragons in a lot of settings are that way. In some cases, there's someone who's basically like a walking gorilla, and is just stronger and faster and more agile, higher tier stats, that kind of a thing. Just had me thinking while she was running around montaging. Now, the episode, well, hang on. There's this bit where she says getting a Griffin a Cutie mark thing is actually impossible, and there's this tiny little moment, I love these little moments, these help sell this show, where Scootaloo just glances at her wings again as she's saying that, once again reminding herself of that impossible problem. Come back to that in a minute. And then there's the other common reaction to negativity that people tend to have. In this case, that would be denial. There's also avoidance, but this episode doesn't discuss that, so we won't talk about that today. Again with the showing and then telling thing. This show loves to do that, doesn't it? Everything she does throughout the montage is in line with her actual purpose, and she shows what her actual purpose, her actual position within the pattern is. She's helping people. Now, this is actually funny because this is how she gets caught. I mean, yeah, we have the scene with Twilight, and Twilight geeks out because she gets to do a research paper. That's awesome. I'm sure that'll never come up again. But she's actually caught because she's sitting there trying to help a pony who's stuck. It's like, hang on. Hang on. Give me a second. So then, and even sorry, one more thing. And even the fake cutie mark that she actually put on her wasn't actually for her own sake. It was for their sake. It was for the Cutie Mark Crusaders' sake. There's this thing where one of them, I think it was Sweetie Belle, says maybe we can only help ponies. But this episode does bring this idea up and makes it very clear, and I love the world building of this. Granted, this has already been established in some ways, but this makes this very firmly clear. And what is that? Well, it makes it clear that the pattern is not exclusive to ponies, which is an important narrative bit, I think. In other words, we've already seen it from Pinkie Pie and Rainbow to Gilda, and from Gilda to Greta, but here now we see very clearly the idea of what a cutie mark is not a species-exclusive thing. Other species may not have a magically crafted Kong thing that shows up, you know, on their flank, you know, a literal brand, as I mentioned earlier, or tattoo or whatever, but they still have that concept, that choosing who and what they want to be and where they want to go with their life going forwards. And once they commit to that and make that decision, it clearly informs their actions and personality going forwards, just like it already has with Gabby. If you're paying attention, what Gabby has been doing, she effectively already had her cutie mark prior to even entering the episode, because she was already doing it, trying to spread joy and happiness to other people, trying to help others. It wasn't until her big moment, her big, you know, the moment in which her cutie mark would have actually manifested, I think, in my opinion, is actually the exact moment in which she saw the interaction between Gilda and Greta, back during the episode where Pinkie Pie and Rainbow Dash were there. That realization and revelation would just be the moment of, aha! And, you know, assuming such a thing exists, which obviously it doesn't. I do have to admit, though, this makes it so the episode makes it really, really clear. Gilda does have her mark. She does have her purpose. She just doesn't have the tattoo. I do have to admit, though, there's something that I tremendously enjoy about forcing reality to bend to your will, because that's something I believe in real life, and I've done many times in my real life. See what I do for a living for an example of this. So instead of trying to make the thing there show up on her bicep or flank, whatever, instead she decides to, or they decide to actually physically craft, you know, the two Cutie Mark Crusader marks, which she can then put onto her poncho or her bags and carry those around. Yeah, no, I'm with that. They even throw a cute Siniera for her, which was actually really touching. Well, listen, I'm going to fix gravity later, Raskor. That's more of a long-term problem. What? Gravity needs to be fixed. I've talked about this before. It's a problem. Entropy, that's another one. We need to fix entropy. Anyways. And then, you know, they have a big hug. More crazy, incredible expressions. Come back soon. And she's never seen again. That I've seen. Listen, this world is imperfect. Sorry. I don't spoil it, except people probably already have in chat. But yeah, and I tend to agree. Cutie Mark Crusader episodes, ever since season 1, really, have been legitimately high mark episodes. So who knows? It's strange to think about too. This episode was written by a bunch of people. We've got Megan McCarthy, Josh Haber, and Ed Valentine, I believe. He's around here somewhere. There. What do y'all think for colors? Yeah, no, I think it's a good episode. I mean, I feel like I'm doing a bad job of discussing the themes of the episode, but this episode does a lot well. It introduces an interesting character that's never seen again. It analyzes and discusses the ideas of what a cutie mark actually represents with regards to other species, and has some good setting building concepts with regards to the pattern and all that fun stuff. I've noticed there's a lot of good setting building in the Cutie Mark Crusader episodes, probably because they tend to focus on the cutie marks, and the cutie marks are world building 101. So that's probably a deliberate thing there. Oh, I forgot to... Of course I did. I forgot to send out the announcement on Discord. Listen, all I'm saying, Savacom, is I'm going to fix gravity someday. You watch. I'm already living in an era where it's possible I will live forever, so, you know, that's on the horizon there. I think I'm good with red. Let's go ahead and make that red. And if we do make that red, which is hysterical in its own right, that means that Josh Haber has had the weirdest track record. So check this out, right? Megan McCarthy has been all over the place. She has been blue to purple. Everything in between, right? Ed Valentine has had 4 episodes. A red, an orange, a blue, and a red. But then we have Josh Haber. Now, Mr. Haber has had a red, a yellow, a green, a purple, and then a red, a red, a red, a red, a red, and a red. Interesting track record. Anyways, with all that stated and presented as such, yeah, probably had to get his footing, Raskor. Probably had to be like, oh, I know. In fact, if you look at his episodes that we've covered so far, so we had Castlemania, good stuff, and then Simple Ways, and then Leap of Faith, and then Bloom and Gloom, and then it's just been great ever since. And notice he did the Cutie Remark, Crystalling, Gift of Mod Pie, On Your Marks, Stranger Than Fanfiction, and of course this. I've also noticed Haber has been much more active since Season 6, and only started with Season 4. So yes, next up will be Viva Las Pegasus. Oh yeah, by the way, M.A. Larson, just to get that out there, had a green, an orange, a red, a purple, a green, a red, a red, a red, purple, 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 purple. I think that says everything I need to say about M.A. Larson. Anyways, moving on. Meanwhile, Neil Dussadeau has a deep blue, a blue, and a green. And Jim Miller has a deep blue, a yellow, and a red. So I don't even know what to make of that one. Anyways, next episode is something. I'm pretty sure it's Viva Las Pegasus. I am correct. I don't really have many strong memories of that episode. I know it's a map episode. I know that Flim and Flam are in it, or Flick and Flack, or whatever their stupid names are. And it's Fluttershy and I think Applejack? I don't know. I don't have strong memories of that one, so this will be kind of one of those sort of for the first time ones. Oh yeah, it's also got the thank you very much for coming along. We'll see in about 25 minutes.